I messed it up. And it's okay. And it's okay. Hi everyone, I want to say welcome back to Kat's Corner. I'm super excited to be doing our second cooking episode here. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone for all the support that you guys have given me over the last week. As you guys know, I launched my channel officially a week ago and it has been amazing. The feedback has been so great. I've had some good things and I've had some things to fix, and I really appreciate all of it. I appreciate the advice and everything. You guys are so amazing. I want to give a big shout out to Ariel, who's a friend of mine. She has officially named you guys, my subscribers, Kat's Kittens. So I love her so much and it makes me so happy. So hashtag recipes, hashtag Kat's Kittens. So as you guys remember, last week we did apple pie, which was so good and it turned out so well. There were some things obviously that the recipe kind of threw me off, but it was fine. We did it. I do want to continue with the fall theme. There will be a little bit of a Halloween spin in today's recipe, and I'm excited. It's so great. For those of you who do not know, I grew up in Winston-Salem, and inside Winston-Salem there's this little place called Old Salem. Shout out to my grandmother. She has been watching and giving me feedback, so she'll appreciate the story because she'll remember it. Growing up, we used to go to Old Salem, and every time we went, they would make these Moravian cookies. For those of you who haven't had a Moravian cookie, they're basically cookies that are paper thin. They're so crisp and so jam-packed with flavor, and this recipe reminds me of those, so I'm super excited to be making it. It is another sweet, but it's more of like a savory, spicy sweet. So it's a little bit different than the apple pie. But today we are going to be making ginger crisps. They are ginger cookies essentially, and they're made super thin, and apparently it makes 14 dozen. What am I going to do with 14 dozen cookies?
That's a whole lot of cookies.
And everything's pre-measured. Okay, well apparently this makes 14 dozen cookies. So Lily, you get 5 dozen to take home. James, you'll have to eat the other 9 dozen. It's fine. Everything's fine. Alright, so we're going to be making apparently 14 dozen cookies that I don't need. Hopefully, maybe because my cookies will be a little bit bigger, maybe it's going to be less. We're going to hope. So, to start off this recipe, we are going to go ahead and preheat our oven up for 350 degrees. So it's a pretty simple recipe. Once again, there's only 3 steps, one of which is preheat the oven. So hopefully this is a smooth and easy episode of Kat's Corner, just in abundance. But yes, I'm glad there's only 3 steps again. We're going to see how many more 3-step recipes I can punch out. The first thing you guys are going to do is you're going to want to take 1 cup of butter. In drag queen terms, that's 2 sticks of butter. You do want to make sure that your 2 sticks of butter are at room temperature. We're going to be mixing these. Hopefully you have an electric mixer if you're trying to do this at home. Thankfully I do. James's aunt gave it to me, and it's going to be my lifesaver in this. Because you're going to want to beat the butter, and if you're doing that at a cold temperature, it's impossible. It takes forever. This is way quicker. Just set your butter out beforehand. I kind of did that. I kind of didn't. I may have just set it out like 15 minutes ago, but hopefully that's enough. Alright, so we have our 2 sticks of butter in our mixer getting ready to go. So now we're going to take a 1/2 cup of light brown sugar, which if you are making these recipes as I make them, that means that you have brown sugar left over from last week's when we did the apple pie. Alright, so to go with our 2 sticks of butter, our 1/2 cup of brown sugar, we're also going to add in a 1/2 cup of regular sugar. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lower our mixer, and you want to beat it at about medium speed, and you want to do that until it's a creamy consistency. I will be jumping on the Lilycam so you guys can actually see what the process is like. Okay, so in here I have our 2 sticks of butter, our 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and a 1/2 cup of sugar. So we are just going to lower this, and we're going to turn it on to about medium speed. And we're just going to start mixing. Alright, so one of the things you want to make sure you're doing is you want to make sure you are scraping down the sides, because butter and sugar will like to hide on the side, and you don't want that. You want to make sure it's being evenly mixed throughout. So now that we've made that into a nice creamy consistency, we can move on to our next step. So the next step, you are going to be taking 1 cup of light corn syrup. So I'm currently adding in our corn syrup. And I did notice that it does say light corn syrup, so make sure you guys are following that as best as you can. Alright, so now that I've added in our light corn syrup, I'm not mixing it yet, but I am going to go ahead and add in our 1 cup of maple syrup. Now I didn't do table syrup or anything like that, I just went for straight maple syrup. And I will say this was also organic, so that's really good. So now that I have added in our 1 cup of maple syrup and our 1 cup of light corn syrup, I'm gonna go ahead and lower the mixer, and we're gonna go ahead and continue mixing. All right, so now we are mixing in our corn syrup and our molasses. Not molasses. We are mixing in our light corn syrup and our maple syrup. Okay guys, so in our mixer we have gotten that to a nice, honestly it's still kind of a creamy consistency. So in here I do have 1.5 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1.5 teaspoon of ginger, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then we do have a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. It smells so good. It smells like fall and I'm so excited. So I'm gonna go ahead and start adding those in. I'm going to go ahead and slide that to the side. Alright, so our next step is we are going to sift our 4.5 cups of flour. Yeah, 4.5 cups, because what I didn't realize is that this makes 14 dozen cookies. James, I hope you're hungry. So I am using a hand sifter to sift our flour. Alright, so I am sifting by hand and doing the 4.5 cups of flour. You really want this to be sifted just because you want this to be as smooth of a cookie as you can get it. This is so much physical labor. Anyone that says that cooking is not a workout is lying. Okay, so now that we have sifted 4.5 cups of flour, it looks so light and fluffy and I'm so excited. Now our big step, and this is the step that I always really enjoy because you can really see the whole recipe coming together, is we are going to slowly, do not dump all of this in at once. It will not be pretty, it will not go well, don't do it. We're going to be adding this flour into our mixture a little bit at a time, getting it really incorporated into the mixture, and you're going to see it kind of going from a creamy consistency to a dough. So yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be great. So I'm going to go ahead and set that on about a 2 on my mixer, and I'm just going to start getting that flour in there. We're going to do a little bit at a time just because you want to make sure that it gets well incorporated. Alright guys, so you see I have that thicker consistency. Our flour is incorporated. Now it looks more like a dough. Alright guys, so you want it to have this well incorporated mixed look to it. Yes, so I have our mixture well mixed. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cover it and you're going to want to let it cool in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes, which I just made the connection. And mind you, I pre-read this recipe at least 4 times. But I just made the connection that step 1 is preheat the oven. Step 2 is to make the dough and then cool it for 30 minutes or chill it for 30 minutes. So why is my oven going for 30 minutes just while this chills? I'm a drag queen. I don't have all that money. I'm turning off my oven. I do not need my power bill will be skyrocketing. I'm gonna set a timer for 20 minutes, and that way at 20 minutes I'll preheat my oven. But do not preheat it until after it's chilled, or at least until about the halfway point of the chill time, because that's just a lot of electricity we're wasting, and I am not about it. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover this, put it in the refrigerator, and I'll be back in about 30 minutes so that we can move on to the next step of our process. Alright, so our dough has chilled for 30 minutes, and now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step, the fun step. If you haven't already, make sure your oven is back on 350, because like I said, there's no sense in doing it at the beginning of this, because it took me about 45 minutes in total to get everything mixed and refrigerated. So I'm gonna hate my life later. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm kind of doing a little bit of flour on our countertop, because we are going to be rolling this out. I do have my rolling pin. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of flour on that as well, just to make sure that nothing is sticking. I have also floured my rolling pin just to make sure that nothing sticks. I have a feeling because of the maple in it that this might be kind of more of a sticky dough. It's like the monster that lived. I'm noticing this dough is really sticky, so I kind of made sure I really went heavy on the flour when I went to go to roll it out. It's really sticky. I think if you're gonna make this at home, just go ahead and add more than 4.5 cups of flour, because this is not going well. I'm pissed right now. I'm hella angry. This is literally slop. Like, maybe their syrup was thicker than mine, so maybe that's why.
What'd you use?
Maple syrup?
Instead of molasses?
Huh?
Instead of molasses?
No, I mean, well, no, it was maple. It wasn't molasses. It didn't call for it.
Look at your recipe. Tell me where it doesn't say molasses.
Huh?
Tell me where it doesn't say molasses on your recipe.
Let's say both.
If you're gonna do this, just a heads up, read the recipe fully. I read it like 7 times, but apparently I didn't read it well enough to know that it calls for molasses and not maple syrup. The thing about molasses is molasses is a lot thicker than maple syrup. So our recipe, our dough was very thin and sticky. The dough tastes amazing, so however this turns out, I'm sure it'll be great. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and take our rolling pin and we're gonna make sure you really flour it, like more than I said before. We're gonna throw a little bit, and now we're gonna start rolling out our dough. Which I am gonna say, as you roll it out, the parts that did not get floured are starting to stick to the rolling pin. But that's okay, because we're gonna make it work. I'll push mine out a little bit with my hands. Yeah, I'm sure if you guys do this and you don't mess up, it's going to be a lot smoother and it's going to be a lot easier to work with. For me, like I said, I'm just basically adding in flour just to thicken that up and kind of make it less sticky. James is the one that pointed out that it calls for molasses and not maple syrup. But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Don't judge me. I see you judging. I see your judgy eyes. A little bit more. We're gonna hope and pray that it works out. Kind of. Alright guys, so because I made a big mess, I'm basically reflouring my rolling pin every time I go to roll, just because I'm noticing it's helping me keep the dough from sticking to, well, everything. Yeah, be smarter than me. That's why we do this, because this is the kind of things that I do. And then it turns out usually amazing. Jax disagrees, as you heard. Wow. Alright, so I've got this rolled out as much as I think it's gonna get rolled out. I'm not gonna lie. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take some festive cookie cutters. Alright, so I went ahead and dipped the edges in flour, and now I'm gonna just start cutting little pieces of cookie. Alright, so now we're gonna figure out how to get these on the pan. I ended up adding probably about a cup of flour. That's a lot, I know. That's that's a lot of flour, I know. But it was the only thing saving this whole entire recipe. So now we're kind of going off the grid. We're going off the books, and we're kind of making things that way. So I'm gonna flour our rolling pin again. I'm basically just rolling out this dough now that it's thicker and it's able to be rolled out. So the recipe calls for about 1/8 inch dough. I don't quite know where that is on here, so I'm just rolling it really thin. Also, I had to go off, like I said, I had to go off the books, so this recipe isn't quite what it was in the beginning. So they may, who knows what's gonna happen, because the consistency is different now. I do have these cute little cookie cutters that I picked up for this just because I figured, you know, we'll make it a little bit more Halloween. So, as I said, I messed up this recipe a little bit. So what I'm having to do is I'm basically having to do small sections at a time so that I can get this to not stick to the counter, because it's really sticky. And I'm flouring both sides just to kind of help. And since I'm doing it in smaller portions, I think I can get a thinner cookie. So I'm gonna start with probably one of the more difficult ones. I'm gonna start with one of my cat cookie cutter. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and do my witch's broom cookie cutter. And we'll do our back cookie cutter. Alright, so I'm just gonna pick up that dough from around it. Now that I've heavily floured the surface, this is very much what I expected. So I'm gonna lay that out on our pan with what we have to work with. Alright, so we're gonna do a vampire teeth. I'm gonna pat that in that flour. We're gonna do a vampire teeth for James. And we're gonna do, I called this an apple, he called it a pumpkin, or I called it a pumpkin, he called it an apple. Now we're just gonna pull those pieces of extra dough out of the way. Like I said, I'm having to kind of piece this together because I messed up. But they're cute. I'm gonna do a dog bone for Tyler. You don't know who Tyler is, but I do. Tyler, I did a dog bone cookie for you. Okay, this isn't so bad now. It's just, like I said, I think it's just a really sticky dough. And I really hope this turns out. If not, you know, it's okay. That's the point. We're gonna have some fails here because I'm tackling things I'm a perfectionist. So the fact that I'm tackling a recipe I've never done before with knowing the knowledge that I might mess up is already a win, and a success is already a win for me, because anybody that knows me knows that I'm like, no. Oh no. I've never done this before, no. It's made a lot of dough though. I mean, it's definitely not going to be, thankfully, 14 dozen cookies, which I'm very excited about the fact that it's not. Yeah. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop these into the 350-degree oven. And we're going to bake them for 8 minutes like the recipe says, and we're going to see what happens. While we are waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and keep our dough going. I'm going to keep cutting out some of these pieces. They smell amazing. They smell on point. Okay, so I think Lily might have been right. I think they kind of turned out to be more of a shortbread cookie than they did to be just a regular cookie, which is fine. You know, we're going to roll with the punches here. We're going to keep taking our cookie cutters. And now what I'm doing is I'm dipping them in butter because I had to heavily flour them. And I think that's going to kind of help with the flour residue. All right, so here we are. I've made about 32 cookies out of this recipe. Like I said, I messed up on this recipe. If you're gonna do this at home, make sure you use molasses and not maple syrup. But obviously here, because I misread the recipe, I had to make the recipe incorrectly because the point is trying new recipes I haven't tried. So they came out really cute. They're kind of look more like a shortbread. Look at that kitty. It's your kitty. Oh my god, I made one of you guys. I made a cat's kitten. It's a cat's kitten. But yeah, so I have a nice little collection here. I have Tyler's bone. No, Tyler's bone. He's probably somewhere judging me. It's fine. But now comes the fun part where we taste it. James is at work right now, so I will add his footage in later of the James test and the James notes. And it's probably the #1 note. Watch, I'm foreshadowing. His biggest note is use the right ingredients. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. It's good, but it's not what I started out making. It's kind of more like a shortbread. It's turned into a shortbread cookie, and it's really mellow, and then it has like the aftertaste of the cinnamon and the nutmeg, and I didn't even have nutmeg in it. It has the aftertaste of cloves and cinnamon and ginger. There's a nice little crunch. I mean, did I do this recipe correctly? No, not at all. This is not what this was supposed to be. But did it turn out okay? Absolutely. Well, alright guys, well, I will say I'm impressed. This, like I said, this is not the original recipe. I misread the recipe and used maple syrup instead of molasses. But it turned out to be a really good shortbread cookie. I'm proud of them. We'll see what James thinks later. But we did it. I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. And if you like this video, definitely like it. If you want to see me do more of these things, hit the notification bell. And above all else, thank you guys for every comment and all of your interaction. I am so honored, and I'm so honored. And so for those of you that are new and those of you that are subscribing to my channel for the first time, welcome to my litter of kittens, because you guys are my cat's kittens. Today's recipe was kind of a fail, but kind of a success. We turned it out. We did what we could, and I used what cooking knowledge I have, and here we go. If you guys want to see me do this recipe correctly, let me know in the comments. I would say if you know what was wrong with this recipe, you could tell me that too, but we know that it's because I can't read directions well. I don't follow directions very well. But yeah, make sure you guys tune in next week. I'll be posting next Wednesday with another spooky Halloween recipe. This one was more fall, so you guys know I gotta amp it up. We gotta get that Halloween stuff rolling. Definitely share this video if you can, like this video, subscribe, and be here with me. So you do want to make sure that the cheese sticks of so to go with our butter and our half cup of brown sugar, you want to add in 1/2 cup. So I'm going to take, so I'm going to go ahead